So I normally don't do videos like this. I don't like them. I don't like pre-recording things. Unlike YouTubers who pre-record and script everything, I do everything off the top of my head. I know how to improv. I know how to process information on the fly because, pro tip, when you're an expert at something, you don't need to script everything out or have someone write it for you and then read it and then pre-record everything. So I much prefer to do things live. And in fact, the origin of this video came today when I watched Blaire White's expose on Eliza Bleu as part of my regular stream. And I have to be honest, listen, I don't believe Eliza Bleu has behaved perfectly in this situation. I have my own questions about her, up to and including, why did I get a privacy violation notice from YouTube for a video I did defending Eliza? I have questions about that. So I don't think she's behaved perfectly at all. In any way. Mistakes were made. But what's right is right. And Blaire is a massive YouTuber that made a smear piece about Eliza Bleu. It's a smear piece. It is a blatant, raging smear piece. And I don't have to personally think that Eliza Bleu has behaved perfectly to say what's right is right and what's wrong is wrong. And when you have conservative grifter shills that only care about hair and makeup and then feign interest in politics so they can make money to buy clothes and pretty things, but they lie in order to do it, and they throw real people under the bus in order to do it. I don't know, man. I kind of think that deserves a little bit of a defense. Maybe my sense of fairness and justice is just way overblown. I don't know. So I'm sitting here at my desk trying to write, and I just couldn't get this video that Blaire did out of my head and how absolutely awful it was. How many lies this bitch told. How many things she twisted out of context, either because she's being malicious or because she's too stupid to understand what she's talking about. I'm 50-50 on which that is. Probably a little bit of both, if we're honest. So I couldn't stop thinking about it, and I said, F it. I'm going to go point by point through Blaire White's hit piece on Eliza Bleu, and I'm going to debunk it. What? Why not? Why not? Let's have some fun. All right, let's dig in.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we are talking about the Jussie Smollett of the right, Eliza Bleu. If you have even one foot in the door of the right-wing algorithm on Twitter or YouTube, you've seen her face, you've seen her name, her like fifth name, by the way. We're on her fifth invented identity.
Doesn't Blaire White have multiple names? I'm sorry, Blaire White is a stage name. It is not her legal name. I have seen her driver's license. I've seen her ID in person. For those who don't know, I've done a couple of events with Blaire White. Now, I'm not going to claim that I know her well. I'm not going to claim we were ever friends. Blaire White and I are very different people. But I have been with her in person. I've spoken to her in person. I've seen her backstage at events. I know how different Blaire White is off camera than the persona that she tries to project on camera. And I've seen her ID. It's not her real name. I don't think this should actually be a spoiler to anyone. I'm not going to say what her real name is because I'm going to protect some modicum of privacy. But it's not, Blaire White is not her real name. And like, am I on glue? Or did Blaire White have a whole different YouTube channel called Blaire Black? How is that any different than Eliza Bleu having a persona when she was cutting hair in the music scene that she called herself Eliza Cuts? I'm sorry, that just makes sense. That is a persona. She was a scene girl. It was a stage name. She was cutting hair. Guess what? She's no longer cutting hair now. So maybe it makes sense that she wouldn't use the Eliza Cuts name. And so far as Eliza Seep, it's my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, that was a married name. Her maiden name, Eliza Morthland? See, I don't even really care because this whole issue of Eliza Bleu having several different monikers that is no different than any of these other influencers. It makes no difference at all. Listen, people go through stages in life where they might do something in their early 20s, like cut hair for rock bands and do stupid things. And by the way, if you haven't done stupid things in your 20s, you didn't really live during your 20s. I'm sorry, that's reality. So you might travel with rock bands when you're in your 20s, cut their hair, have a whole persona around doing hair and makeup. And then guess what? You grow up and you move on to other things and you change as a human being. And when that happens, it might make sense to change the name you're going by online, change the name you're going by in the industry. There is nothing nefarious about Eliza Bleu having multiple different names. Many influencers, including Blaire White, do exactly the same thing.
For the past year or so, she has been a darling of right-wing media and the online right sphere. She's made appearances on almost every notable and relevant right-wing podcast, from The Blaze, Daily Wire, Timcast, Michael Malice. She's been everywhere. She even grifted close enough to the sun to develop a personal relationship with Elon Musk.
Blaire is repeating this lie that so many grifters before her have told, which is Eliza is like best friends with Elon Musk and Ella Irwin. They're besties. She just texts them and she can get anyone banned off the platform that she wants. Well, if Blaire had read the piece that Shane Cashman did, at least the first part of his series on Eliza Bleu, that came out the day before Blaire published her video, so she had plenty of time to read it, just to fact check to make sure, she would have read this section. I love Elon Musk, but we weren't friends previously. It's not that I wouldn't be, it's just that we really just met on Twitter Spaces. I've never met him in person. He's so busy, there wasn't time to become friends even if he desired a friendship. Same goes for Twitter VP of Trust and Safety, Ella Irwin actually. We met on Spaces, but we haven't met in person. There is no evidence at all that Eliza Bleu is friends with any of these people. It's just that they're doing what people posit she wants them to do, but there's no proof at all that there's a personal connection. There may be other reasons they're doing it. They may be influenced in other ways, but Blaire saying that Eliza Bleu is friends with Elon Musk is a flat out lie.
And help dictate policy on Twitter, making her objectively one of the most powerful people on social media. Her claim to fame is being a human trafficking survivor advocate, although she's recently been exposed for allegedly fabricating the entire story of her being human trafficked.
One of the things I find so ridiculous in this entire situation is how many YouTubers have been like, the Daily Beast wrote an article about Eliza, huzzah! It must be correct. Do any of you remember when the Daily Beast wrote an article about Tim Pool stealing a cat? This really happened. This was a long article. It was one of the greatest hit pieces of all time. The Daily Beast produced a feature-length article that was all about how Tim Pool stole the cat. It was a raging hit piece. The Daily Beast is filled with raging hit pieces. So why on earth would anyone make the assumption that this one time, when it's so convenient for everyone's narrative to hate Eliza Bleu because they're all best friends and all lying to protect each other, why is it this one time the Daily Beast, which is a far left-wing publication, they're telling the truth this time? Were they telling the truth when they wrote the hit piece about Tim Pool stealing a cat? Come on, people, use your common sense.
And the timeline of her so-called victimhood is collapsing in real time.
Friends of Eliza Bleu claim that she is exaggerating her experiences for attention and clout, telling the Daily Beast, quote, "It's making a lot of her old friends around here really angry," said Carly Wenzel, who claims to have known Bleu for 2 decades, adding that she's completely lying.
Look, there are a lot of questions about whether she was actually a victim of sexual trafficking.
Now I'm going to say this, as a person who has had hit pieces produced about her, I have had hit pieces written about me where they purported to talk to people who were really close to me. They really knew me so well. The people they had talked to had less than 5 conversations with me in real life, ever. And they weren't like in-depth, long, drawn-out phone calls or like, these deep evening conversations over a bottle of wine. They weren't those types of conversations. They were conversations that were very cursory, very short, had no depth to them at all. And now all of a sudden, these people are turning up in the media, commenting on my mental health, commenting on my choices in life, even when I have receipts to debunk every single thing these people say based on time-stamped receipts. That doesn't matter when people are writing hit pieces about you. It doesn't matter at all. They're going to write whatever they want to write. And if someone comes forward that says, I knew Eliza Bleu, we were best friends in grade school, they're going to take it as the God's honest truth because that person's probably going to sell them the story they want to hear. You have got, any time a publication says their best friend said X, Y, B, and Z, you need to be skeptical of that, guys, especially if it's an adversarial publication. Like the Daily Beast doing an article on Eliza Bleu is automatically an adversarial relationship, because the Daily Beast is on the far left and they're going to think that Eliza Bleu is a right-wing extremist like the rest of us, even if that's not true because she's a libertarian, she's an ANCAP. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. But just suffice it to say that warning bells went off in my head about that article as soon as it was published and I heard these really close friends and they said all this stuff. I'm sorry, I want receipts. Show me the receipts. And if you don't actually have evidence, then I'm going to assume that it's just a hit piece, like every other article the Daily Beast writes.
And I just want to say, there are few forms of activism that I respect more than any individuals who wish to put even a dent in the monstrosity that is human trafficking. That is a worthwhile fight in my eyes. And so anyone who takes up that mantle, I think I speak for most people when I say that people view people like that as righteous.
So while we're on the topic of Blaire White, not her real name, talking about how it is a righteous fight to fight against human trafficking and all of these things happening to kids, which Blaire is not wrong when she says that. The problem is that Blaire doesn't actually believe that. And I know that for a fact. And I'm going to present you this article, and this is also going to become relevant later when we get to the smear piece that Katie Herzog tried to do on Eliza Bleu. Katie Herzog did an hour-long smear piece podcast on me in which I went on to literally debunk every single thing that Katie Herzog said in that podcast over a series of videos, a series of clips, a series of articles. There was not one truthful thing that bitch said in that entire podcast. Katie Herzog had access to all of the receipts, all of the evidence. Katie Herzog had me following up with her after the fact saying, Katie, here's proof that you were lying about every possible thing. And she chose to ignore it. Now, that's going to become relevant for Katie's credibility later, but I bring that up because the very first article that I produced when I was debunking Katie Herzog's smear piece was this one. You can find this on my Substack, carlin.substack.com. Journalist Katie Herzog, quote-unquote journalist, believes it's okay for schools to cover up when teachers sexually molest students. I bring this up because this is an article. One of the things that Katie Herzog said in her smear piece podcast about me was that basically, I got a no trespass order from a school board meeting, which is true. But what she did was she made it seem like I was a lone crazy person going to a school board meeting. That wasn't true. I was going with the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire because there was a school board that was covering up for teachers sexually molesting students. And I have receipt upon receipt upon receipt. You can see here is a tweet of people speaking to the school board at the meeting. It was a concerted effort. There was a whole massive group of people that went. There was a lot of yelling. The Libertarian Party of New Hampshire specifically had a strategy called Tyrants Have Addresses, or Make Tyrants Afraid Again. And you can see they're retweeting me here because we plan to go and quite frankly be a little disruptive at this school board meeting because, again, the school was covering up for teachers sexually molesting students. And so you can go and look at this article if you want there. But the reason I bring this up in relation to what Blaire White is saying right now, again, Blaire White is not her real name, and we should all probably vilify her for that, just like she's vilifying Eliza Bleu. The reason I bring this up is that when this incident happened, Blaire White sided with the school as well. Blaire White came at me on Twitter over this. Blaire White sided with the school who was covering up when teachers were sexually molesting students, and she came at me in exactly the same way that Katie Herzog came at me. And so I don't believe in any way, shape, or form that Blaire White actually cares about this. Not in any way. What has Blaire White tangibly done on this issue? What has she done? Because if she is going around attacking people who are taking part in protests at school boards when schools cover up when teachers are sexually molesting students, if she's taking the side of the school in that, I'm sorry, that's beyond. That shows you where her values are. If attacking me for being one of several people to get a no trespass order, and by the way, I wear that no trespass order like a badge of honor. If attacking me for getting a no trespass order is more important than the fact that we got the superintendent fired from that school board meeting, so I never had to go back again anyway, and Blaire White isn't celebrating that there was retribution for a school that was covering up when teachers were sexually molesting students, why on earth would we believe that she actually cares about this issue in any way, shape, or form at all? It makes no sense.
View people like that as having their morals intact and inspirational, really inspiring all of us that we can do more in that fight. But what happens when someone lies about being a human trafficking survivor? What happens when someone fabricates that victimhood?
I mean, I guess, Blaire, I would ask, what happens when an influencer posts a video in which they are obviously and provably lying about an activist? What happens when an influencer takes things and twists them out of context to mean things they didn't mean for the purpose of engaging in a smear campaign that, by the way, might be a concerted PR effort? It's not out of the realm of possibility. But regardless of whether you got paid to do this sort of thing or you didn't, Blaire, it doesn't really matter. What does matter is you're not telling the truth and you're taking things and twisting them out of context, and it kind of calls into question your credibility, doesn't it?
Grifts off that alleged victimhood, achieves fame, success, awards based on that fabricated victimhood. That is what's being alleged about Eliza Bleu. So let's get into it. But depending on what year you come across this human named Eliza, you know her as different things based on whatever identity she currently has, whatever.
We've already talked about this, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but Blaire White has multiple names. Blaire White has multiple identities. So do most influencers. There's nothing nefarious about this. If these influencers were really concerned about the censorship, then why are they leading all their videos with, she had 5 different names? They don't really care about this. They're using it to try to distract you.
Or alias and persona, invented persona, you catch her in. Got to break out the list here because there's just so many names over the years I have to keep up with. There's Eliza Morthland, Eliza Cuts, Eliza Seep, Eliza Knows, and now Eliza Bleu. We're currently on Eliza Bleu. However,
so it kind of sounds to me like Eliza Bleu had different identities based on what she was doing in her life at the time. And when she stopped doing that thing, like cutting hair, she changed her internet persona. It doesn't seem like it's all that big of a deal. It literally impacts nothing.
These identities ranged from failed reality star.
Now, Eliza lives a rock and roll lifestyle. She says she's pretty exciting, but she still has problems when it comes to men.
Let me introduce you to a walking STD of a human being named Mike Harlow. Now, as you might suspect, because he desperately wants to be an influencer, Mike Harlow is not Mike Harlow's real name. Michael Bernstein is his real name. So I'm sure that Blaire White is going to rake him over the coals at any second for using an alias. He also has different aliases that he goes by on his social media accounts. It's just the way it goes. Anyway, I bring up Mike Harlow because Blaire White wants to drag Eliza Bleu over the coals for being a failed reality star. Guess what? Mike Harlow is an even bigger failed reality star, and he seems to be getting along with just fine with Blaire White. I know this because I toured with Mike Harlow in 2020 for the Walkaway campaign. We did events together once a week. I know what was going on, and I know in 2020, Mike Harlow was scheduled to be on Survivor. He was cast to be on Survivor. We were all very excited that he was going to go be on Survivor. Well, guess what? Survivor ultimately cut Mike Harlow from the cast. And that's not even the only reality show this guy has tried to get on. He has tried to get on every reality show under the sun, Big Brother, all the different things. He has been extras in music videos. He is so desperate for fame. It is ridiculous. And none of this would matter except that his friend, Blaire White, not her real name, is raking Eliza Bleu over the coals for going on a reality show. At least Eliza got on the reality show. At least she made it onto the show. This guy didn't even do that. And so Blair's one to talk about people being failed reality stars.
I'm self-seeking, self-centered, and fear-based.
Emo groupie who made a name for herself on MySpace, hanging out with Jeffree Star and earning herself a pretty bad reputation in the My Chemical Romance fandom because she allegedly, as the lore goes, stalked the hell out of Gerard Way.
Now, okay, fun fact. Back when I was young and stupid and in my 20s, I almost married a musician. Now, he was nowhere close to as famous as Gerard Way, but that actually benefits Eliza in the point I'm about to make. I was touring all over with this guy. I was at his shows. This was going on for years and years and years. I bring this up to make 2 points about this situation. Number 1, does that picture look like Gerard Way wants to not be with Eliza? Does that look like he is under any sort of duress? No, it does not. And that leads me to point number 2. If a band does not want a girl to be hanging around them, they don't let them backstage and they kick them out. And that was true with the little regional band that had the guy that I was going to marry in it. And it's even more true of a band like My Chemical Romance because it's on such a bigger scale. If My Chemical Romance didn't want Eliza Bleu around, she wouldn't have been around.
The frontman of the band My Chemical Romance made herself unavoidable, stalked him, basically got into a relationship with him, faked a pregnancy. This is all alleged. And then, this isn't alleged, went to write fan fictions about him after their breakup, which is very bizarre. That's a whole video in and of itself, though.
Now, Blair is right about this point, and I actually did look into this, and I actually did read at least one of the fan fictions that Eliza wrote, and guess what? It was really bad. It really was. But if the thing that Eliza is guilty of is writing bad fan fiction when she was in her early 20s, I think that's a pretty forgivable crime to be guilty of. The only reason Blair is bringing it up is to try to embarrass Eliza because Blair is friends with Brittany Venti and Chrissy Mayer, and they're both pissed off at Eliza, and so Blair is jumping on the mean girl horde. None of this has anything to do with what these people allege to care about. They have been screaming censorship, censorship, censorship for like a week and a half now. They claim that censorship is the most important thing that they care about. So then why are we hearing about fan fiction that Eliza wrote when she was in her 20s 20 effing years ago? It makes no difference. Blair's just being a mean girl.
Once that grift expired, she picked up a black scent and decided her new target audience wasn't the emos, it was the blacks.
I'm going to be honest, this sequence that we're about to watch is basically the reason I decided to do this video. It is one of the most disgusting things I've ever seen an influencer do. It is overtly goddamn racist. And I'm not saying that in like a way that the left is saying racist. There is no need for Blair to do this section other than she's being a raging bitch. That's it. What you're about to hear Blaire White say is that Eliza Bleu was pretending to be black because she spoke with an accent. I'm going to address the accent thing a little more in a bit, but Eliza is one of the whitest people you are ever going to see in your life. And the very insinuation that she's trying to pretend to be black, what in God's name is Blaire White, not her real name, smoking when she made this claim?
I was blessed to work with one of the dopest directors in the game. Like, Video God, literally, like, if you look at his resume, I was so blessed as a world star, as a plus-size model. That's what's crazy with the world is that I still would have been plus even in that world star video. And I look at that now and I'm like, dang, I was so skinny, but it was the summer.
And suddenly she was an urban hip-hop video vixen.
So you're telling me the woman that we're looking at right now is pretending to be black because she was in a hip-hop video? Are white people not allowed to like hip-hop? I mean, I don't personally like it all that much myself, but are white people not allowed to like hip-hop? Is that a rule that's been made by Blaire White, or is it Blaire Black? Why is Blaire allowed to have the stage name of Blaire Black? Is Blaire White not her real name, pretending to be black when she created her stage name, Blaire Black? Eliza doesn't look like she's pretending to be black here to me. I'm sorry. I don't see it.
Once that grift expired, she set sights on her new and most current grift, right-wing influencer.
So yes, confirmed. The only evidence that Blaire White has that Eliza Bleu was pretending to be black was that she was in a hip-hop video. Confirmed.
The topic of Jeffrey Epstein and human trafficking was, and still is, very hot within the online rights sphere. People talk about it all the time. The situation was ripe for someone to come in claiming to be a human trafficking survivor and become an influencer based on that supposed identity. Eliza finally found a grift that stuck, so much so that she had the ear of one of the richest and objectively most powerful men on the planet, Elon Musk.
So I want to be very clear. I don't consider myself to be friends with Eliza Bleu. I haven't really had any in-depth conversations with her, but I do consider myself to be friendly with her in that I had Eliza Bleu come speak at a private event in my community. And this was back in 2021. This was October 12th, 2021. You can see this was a promo that I posted on my Instagram at the time. You can see it's date stamped and everything because I always bring receipts. And the reason I bring this up is that Blaire is implying that Eliza Bleu just started doing this stuff for the grift, the grift, the grift. Well, let me tell you what. Grifters don't usually tend to accept invitations to come speak in private, unrecorded, unpaid community Zooms for small audiences to help educate them about the issues related to human trafficking. It just doesn't happen. It makes no sense. If it was really just all about the grift, you want the largest audiences possible, and you're only going to be doing things that are public. And I'll tell you this too. When Eliza came to that meeting, it was not someone who was uneducated about human trafficking. And there are members of my community who were there that can confirm it to this day. You can see the stream I did earlier today. I guess that would be on February 7th now. Basically watching this Blaire White reaction video live where there were members in the chat that said, yeah, we remember. Eliza came and talked to us and she knew what she was talking about. Guys, guess what? You don't go through the extensive training that Eliza has obviously gone through in this area if it's just a grift. But more on that later.
She drew Elon's attention and was, I think, very informally, like where you can see it on Twitter, advising him on what accounts are bad, confront sex trafficking on the platform.
She had the hosts of major right-wing podcasts eating up her story, even though she never, ever actually went into detail about who trafficked her, the situation she was in.
So I'm not going to read this entire article by Shane Cashman on Timcast. This is just part one of his series that he's doing on Eliza Bleu, but it was released on February 6th. Blaire released her hit piece video the following day, having more than enough time to edit it prior to release. And in this article, Shane Cashman asks Eliza to go into the details of her trafficking. Now, you may not be happy with the level of detail she got into, but she gave Shane Cashman a more than enough to go and investigate, and he's going to be able to tell us if any of this is true in future pieces. But this is all what I'm scrolling through right now, and you can go and read it for yourself. This is all Eliza Bleu talking about her experiences trafficking. Blaire White knew this when she recorded her video. She didn't care. She released her hit piece anyway.
The details of her supposed trafficking story, people just took it at face value because honestly, who wants to be the person to go against someone so virtuous? I'm speaking real. Who wants to be the person to say that she's a fraud when she is so apparently selflessly using her story and her hurt and her pain to help people, specifically minors who were victim of human trafficking? I know I wasn't going to want to be the first person to go after her until I started to see some cracks in her story.
I'm sorry, I just have to ask really quick, why is this Blaire White's job to go after her? Why is it anyone's job to go after her, to expose her? What value is that going to have on the world? If Blaire White really cares about the issues that she claims to care about, then she would just focus on helping actual kids. She would focus on helping actual children. But she doesn't, because the reason she's going after Eliza is that she's friends with Brittany Venti, she's friends with Chrissy Mayer, and they're all sticking up for each other in their little mean girl clique. If you don't believe in cancel culture, stop engaging in a pile-on in which you're just smearing and lying about people.
Old clips started resurfacing of Eliza's. Yes, the old clip resurfacing. No influencer is safe from it. Happens to all of us. However, most people in that situation that have old clips resurface don't have to worry about like 6 invented personas that contradict each other. Clips from when she pretended to be Black resurfaced from the 2010s, in which she was a video vixen doing music videos, which is fine enough on its face, minus the accent. I've always said people who, switch up their accents midway through life are batshit crazy. Because
2 points on this. Number 1, anyone who has ever had an accent in their life knows that when you are around people that are speaking that accent is going to be brought out of you. For example, I grew up in Vermont. There is a very distinct Vermont accent that I still have to this day. I pronounce some words funny, like garage. People make fun of me for how I pronounce garage, but that is the Vermont accent having to do with the way that R is pronounced. It's just the way it goes. I picked it up. I can't get rid of it. I've tried. When I moved to Boston, I started to pick up a Boston accent. And when I'm in Boston, around people who have a Boston accent, I'm all park the car and have a yacht and all that. And it happens to people all the time. If Eliza Bleu is hanging around people with that type of accent, it might be very natural for her to pick it up. And I'm going to say again, I'm going to remind you of the private call she did with my locals community, because I've heard people say she doesn't really use that accent in real life. She does use that accent in real life. I've heard her use it in private settings that are unrecorded where there is no benefit for her using it at all. So who cares? It's an accent. She's not pretending to be a different race because of an accent, and that is really effing racist for Blaire to say. I'm sorry, it is. Not in the snowflake way. You don't accuse people of pretending to be another race because of how they're talking. And where it's particularly infuriating that Blaire is doing this is that Blaire White, which is not her real name, Blaire Black, also not her real name. I just don't know how people keep all Blaire's names straight, including the one that doesn't resemble Blaire at all that's on her ID. I think it's a little ironic that someone who has literally changed their entire body to be something different than they were born is ragging on a person for developing an accent based on the people that she was hanging around with. It happens. It happens to a lot of us. We can all identify with this. But for Blaire to pick that out as remember, wasn't this supposed to be about censorship? We haven't talked about censorship at all in this video, but that was supposed to be the big issue that people were so mad at Eliza for. And Blaire is choosing instead to talk about, she developed an accent. How dare she?
There's never a reason to do that unless, you move to a different country and subconsciously, like, the way of speaking sort of rubs off on you. That's one thing. But girl.
So Blaire, are you saying that when you hang around a group of people that have a certain accent, you are likely to subconsciously start adopting that accent? Is that what you're insinuating, Blaire? Huh.
No, you didn't change race. Rachel Dolezal. People started posting screenshots from these publicly available YouTube videos. Again, these videos were on YouTube, publicly available, as well as on World Star Hip Hop. Eliza didn't like that so much. She then reached into her deep connections at Twitter to get people banned off Twitter simply for, again, posting publicly available images. People like Brittany Venti, who's currently still banned off Twitter because of this. People like YouTuber The Quartering, and a lot of other people were literally taken down off Twitter. So the free speech advocate, the woman who has all the right-wing talking points down, right? She'll die on the hill of free speech, she repeatedly says, is suddenly engaging in mass censorship of people bringing up her past. Why? Because it reveals some major holes in her story. She's also been false flagging YouTube creators. People like The Quartering, Brittany Venti, Star Wars Girl, all these channels have been false flagged, and more channels have been false flagged by her for daring to talk about her past, her lies, and her story. So in all likelihood, she may try to false flag this video. I would advise you against that, Eliza. If you're watching, that's not the war that you want.
Now, what Blaire is saying here is not necessarily untrue. That's not the problem that I have with it. In fact, I've said it at the beginning, I'll say it again. I was a little peeved when I got a privacy takedown notice for the video that I posted defending Eliza. But you know what? Again, just because I don't appreciate that doesn't mean that I have to accept hit pieces and smear pieces brought against people where things are just grossly twisted out of context and where someone is obviously and clearly just acting like a mean girl. Now, Blaire right here is trying to present that she's this badass bitch that you just don't want to mess with. Well, let me tell you a little story of when I was at the walkaway debate in Florida in 2020. This is the walkaway LGBT debate that Blaire was in. Blaire, by the way, Blaire doesn't actually know much of anything. She has to have things written out for her. So Blaire got an entire binder of information to prep her to be in this debate. And then it was like a memorization thing. It's like an actor. She's an actor. She's given a script. She reads the script. I know because I saw the effing binder. But that's not even what I want to talk about. I would not be remotely scared that Blaire White would do anything, if I'm honest, because Blaire White was terrified to speak on stage that night. You know what? She wants to be a mean girl. I'll be a mean girl too. Blaire White was terrified to be in that debate that night. She didn't want to do it. In fact, she door dashed a bottle of vodka to the venue to take shots before she went on stage. And then I'm pretty sure she actually had like a mixed drink with her while she was on stage. I could be wrong about that, but there was a metric F ton of drinking going on that night. So she's not a person I'm going to be afraid of. I'm sorry. If you need to take shots of vodka before you go out on a stage, that's not someone that I call a bad bitch.
I'd be lying if I said a big part of why I'm doing this video wasn't to defend them and to speak up on their behalf as well. Not that they're not speaking up on their own, but, you know, I just don't like when people I like are fucked with, so.
That nice moment of clarity where Blaire overtly admits that she's only doing this because she doesn't like that Eliza Bleu says mean things about her friends, and so she is going to say mean things about Eliza Bleu in return, regardless of whether or not those things have any basis in reality at all.
She claims that the music videos she participated in back when she pretended to be Black were non-consensual, and that's why she was having people banned. Keep in mind, it's not as if people are posting revenge porn of her or something. I mean, these are publicly available music videos on YouTube. Now again, Eliza claimed these music videos were non-consensual, but World Star Hip Hop begs to differ. They released a statement saying the videos were consensual and she was paid for them. There's an interview where she reveals that she actually reached out to World Star herself in hopes to be in these videos.
I just feel so blessed. And the way the whole thing came about, and I've never even told anybody this besides maybe a couple girlfriends, was I had a vision. I couldn't sleep one night. I couldn't sleep. And I had a vision. I said to myself, what would take me to the next level, like for myself? What will get me to that next level of that demographic that I want to reach and bring them that art, bring them that fashion, but still keep it within the scope of what I'm doing. And at about 6 o'clock in the morning, I just got this thing in my head like World Star. World Star reaches the most people, like honestly, like that I could reach. You know what I mean? I'm never going to be on E! Television. I'm never going to be on TMZ. You know what I mean? Unless I do something crazy or stupid. Like, I'm never.
So listen, this is one of those things that I don't agree with Eliza on. I think that, you know, listen, your past is your past. You should own your past. But a couple of things to keep in mind. Number one, when people are legitimately abused or legitimately victims of human trafficking, they tend to act out later in very sexually explicit ways. It's the way it goes. You can look it up. But the other thing I want to point out is Blaire still accusing Eliza of pretending to be Black? How would Eliza even know what World Star Hip Hop is if she wasn't immersed in the culture of this space? It sounds to me like it's something that she enjoyed. It sounds to me like it was something that she was really excited to be a part of. And again, do you have to be Black to like hip hop? Is that what Blaire is insinuating? I just think it's bullshit to frame it in this way, even at the same time that I think that, quite frankly, Eliza should just own her past and say, yep, I did it. I grew up. I move on. That would have been a much better way to handle it. It didn't work out that way. I think that's sad, but it doesn't make up for the fact that she's being lied about and smeared. I'm sorry. One does not necessitate the other.
So she claims to have been saved from human trafficking, a story for which she has never provided a drop of evidence, by the way.
It's almost as if Blair didn't bother to read the article that Shane Cashman wrote that was released the day before she released this hit piece video. And again, we're going to find out in Shane's future reporting how much of that was true. He told Eliza's story, but again, Blair's lying when she says that she never released any of the details. Lie. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to be a bitch or anything. Okay, maybe I do just a little bit, but it kind of looks like Blair has a lot of self-tanner or bronzer on the hand she's holding up. Do you guys see how discolored her hand is? That's what self-tanner does when you don't wash. Blair, are you pretending to be black? Are you self-tanning because you're pretending to be black? Because that's actually closer to pretending to be black than Eliza Bleu speaking in an accent.
In 2013, however, these music videos, some of them were published after 2013. So if this was really a result of you being trafficked, why are they happening years after you claim to have been saved from human trafficking? There are interviews back from her wannabe black days where she claims that she turned down $150,000 booking offers. Now, booking, we all know what that means, girl. Booking, these bookings are for her time, right? And she talks about how she has all these athletes and famous people in her DMs trying to book her.
I'm going to say it again. I don't know if Eliza was engaging in sex work or not. To be quite frank, I don't really care. But if she was, if Blair is actually correct with this, that would actually align with Eliza's story of being trafficked, because people who are trafficked and abused tend to act out sexually later, afterwards. So it would actually make sense if she did. And I don't really think we should be judging people's personal choices about what they do with their body either way. But it is not proof in any way, shape, or form that she wasn't trafficked. If anything, it backs up the story.
It's interesting because if you were actually being trafficked at this time, that would mean that you're not in control of what you do. That would mean you're being forced to engage with these men, right? That's what being trafficked for sexual exploitation is. So someone who's been trafficked to engage with men for money certainly isn't within power to turn down bookings, and definitely not for $150K. But let's be real, ain't nobody paying $150K for Eliza Bleu. Eliza claims to have started a charity called the Humanity House, which is a safe haven for victims of human trafficking. Sounds like a very worthwhile endeavor. Only one problem: that charity is not registered.
So again, I don't know what the truth of this particular accusation is, and I hope that we find out in the course of Shane Cashman's reporting. And if Eliza lied, shame on her, man. That's a horrible thing to do. However, charities can be registered in different names than what their branding is. It could be under a completely different name. She hasn't spoken to it either way. We don't know. And I'm sorry, I remember a time when conservatives were all about presumption of innocence, presumption of innocence, presumption of innocence. Blair doesn't have any evidence that this isn't real, other than it's not registered in that name. Well, it could be registered in a different name. It could be registered in a different state. It could be registered with a different person. You don't know. And so why don't we wait for the reporting to come out before we make hit piece videos on the internet? Blair might prove to be correct on this one. She might. But it still doesn't excuse that she does not know that right now when she's making the video.
There's no proof of that charity existing, and there's no proof of anyone ever being taken into this Humanity House. So you're grifting off helping all these people. You're making GoFundMes based on your status. You're going on interviews talking about how you're helping all these people, and there is no proof of this charity actually existing, just your word, which so far...
I wonder if Blair agrees that if someone is proven to take things out of context to, dare I say, craft a narrative that makes someone else look bad, that person shouldn't be trusted. Because on this screenshot right here, we're seeing a fundraiser that Eliza Bleu did to take a vacation. It had nothing to do with this Humanity House charity. That fundraiser that Blair is showing on the screen has nothing to do with the Humanity House charity. If people want to donate money to Eliza Bleu to send her on a vacation, it is their money. They should be able to do what they want with it. People spend their money on stupid things all the time. Right now, Blaire White's best friend, Mike Harlow, I'm sorry, Michael Bernstein, because Mike Harlow's not his real name, just like Blaire White isn't Blaire White's real name. Right now, Blaire White's best friend, Mike Harlow, is raising money, begging people to pay his moving expenses. It's pinned to the top of his Twitter. Go check it out right now. And so, like, people raise money for shit all the time. People raise money for stupid shit all the time. And people are allowed to donate to fundraisers. But the question I have is, why is Blaire White putting a GoFundMe on the screen, making it look like it's connected to Humanity House when it's really something completely different? Why would she do that? Why would she present information out of context? Should we take anything she has to say seriously?
Not the most solid. But then again, it begs the question, maybe Eliza, being real here, doesn't actually know what human trafficking is. Because in an interview with Michael Malice, she claims that she was trafficked on Twitter. And the extent of that was basically that people made fake profiles of her on Twitter.
Trafficked on Twitter as well. So there's been 3 profiles to my knowledge that my former abusers made to traffic me on Twitter.
What does that mean that they trafficked you on Twitter? How can someone traffic you if they're not in contact with you?
Yeah, so the way that was working, I didn't know about the profiles existing because I wasn't on Twitter and I wasn't looking for them. The way that my former abusers were doing it is that it was going back to my Instagram. The Twitter accounts were linking back to my Instagram and they were trafficking me off Instagram.
So a lot of people have been going around saying Eliza doesn't even know the definition of human trafficking based on the clip that we just watched. But I find it a little ironic that if you start earlier in the stream, Eliza Bleu actually gives a very good definition of what she means when she says human trafficking. And by the way, she also said that she didn't have any problem with sex work, which if she was a sex worker, which still has not been proven to my satisfaction, to be quite frank, maybe it has to yours, but even if it's true, she's allowed to have that preference, to be really honest. If she has a past, that's her past to have. And so I want to play the clip that has been really hidden in the course of this conversation because for some reason, none of the influencers going after Eliza Bleu have talked about it.
Yeah, so I have no problem with willing adult sex workers or willing adult entertainers. So when I talk about human trafficking, I'm talking about forced fraud or coercion for the sale of labor, sex, black market human organs, child soldiers, forced child begging, and illegal adoption, and in some cases illegal child marriage. Not all child marriage, unfortunately, is illegal or considered human trafficking, and the list goes on and on. So when we talk about human trafficking, it's a very broad, extremely nuanced crime. In my particular case, I am a survivor. I was trafficked domestically here in the United States. And I'm a United States citizen. So that's it was sex trafficking in my particular case. And so I don't have any problem with willing adult sex workers. I don't have a problem with willing adult entertainers. Unfortunately, sometimes the conversations get a little muddied.
And by the way, what Eliza said in the video that she did with Michael Malice and subsequently, and it actually aligns with this as well, it aligns with what she told Shane Cashman at Timcast. If you've read that article, what Eliza just said to Michael Malice, quite frankly, in both of those clips, even in the one where she's being muddled and confused, and I agree that she was not clear in the clip that's been circulating, but even what she said in that clip aligns with what she told Shane Cashman. So hopefully he's going to be able to suss out if that's actually true. But right now, we don't have evidence that it's not.
I mean, I don't know if for me to tell my story at length is going to take a while.
I don't even need that.
Answer questions about my story is going to take a while.
So I know the basics of your story because I've listened to your podcast.
Right. So I'm trying to figure out exactly what the question is.
Well, I can ask you the questions.
I didn't agree to this. All I agreed to was answering a few questions about Twitter.
Well, okay, sure. That's totally fine. But can I ask you the questions or email you the questions and you can decide if you want to answer or not?
I mean, did you ask Amanda in advance to do that?
No, I told her that I wanted to ask you about the Twitter stuff and about your own story.
Okay, so you
deceived Amanda, didn't tell her everything you wanted to ask
No,
me, and then you got a survivor on the phone
No.
and started asking her about her personal trauma.
No,
Got it.
that's
Okay.
not what happened. I said,
Katie, I think we're probably going to be done here.
And keep in mind, that video right there is the most she has ever gone into detail about her actually being human trafficked.
Well, no, Blair is provably lying about that. Provably lying again, because again, Eliza goes into explicit detail with Shane Cashman in the article that was released more than 24 hours prior to Blair releasing this video. There was no reason that Blair had to release this video, given that contradictory evidence to the content in this video was released in dramatic fashion. It wasn't a quiet release. Everyone knew the article was out. Blair knew about the article. She just chose to ignore it so she could lie to be a mean girl for her friends. And let's talk about that little hit piece that Katie Herzog did for the same podcast that she did the hit piece on me for, that I was able to debunk every single component of it. Katie Herzog is not a real journalist. Katie Herzog is a gossip monger. And the reason that I know that is not only because she did a raging hit piece about me that was easily debunked with publicly available information that Katie Herzog had access to, but I found Katie Herzog trolling around Reddit, looking for gossip on Eliza Bleu. This is a post that I accidentally found. I actually found it when I was looking for the fan fiction that Eliza Bleu wrote. And you've got Katie Herzog, Kitty Persog. That's Katie Herzog. You can see it right there. That is Katie Herzog's Twitter handle. She's trolling around Reddit looking for gossip because people on Reddit are absolutely known to be harbingers of truth with what they talk about on Reddit. And Katie Herzog wants me to believe that she's a credible journalist. Real journalists don't do journalism on Reddit.
She's never named a name. She's never told the details. And granted, I'm not of the opinion that just because you were the victim of a crime, you have to go shouting the name of the person who did it to you from the rooftops. However, combined with all these contradictory timelines, and the fact that she's never offered any proof whatsoever, and the fact that her charity doesn't actually exist on record, and the fact that she said she was saved from it this year, but was participating in stuff this year, it's like, it's not looking good for Eliza. But even with all these weird lies and contradictions that we're catching her in, you would hope that you could at least be able to say that, okay, just because she possibly invented this lie about her being a victim of human trafficking doesn't mean she doesn't actually care about the issue. Maybe she's just that virtuous, so she's willing to put herself and her own credibility on the line to at least temporarily give a voice to this issue, right? Giving her a lot, but let's try to get there in our minds. I don't know, because there's really disgusting clips of her going around where she's actually making excuses for children consenting to engaging with adults.
Now the big smoking gun, right? The proof, the ultimate proof that Eliza Bleu is now a groomer as well, apparently. So this is the clip that's been floating all around Twitter because Chrissy Mayer made sure it floated all around Twitter, and they're taking it completely out of context. And I'm going to provide proof that they're taking it out of context. So first, let's watch the clip, and then I will show you Chrissy Mayer being told emphatically by the host of this podcast that she was wrong in her interpretation of it. This isn't just me saying this. The host of this podcast is going to overtly tell Chrissy Mayer that she was wrong about this. But does Blaire White take that information into consideration? No, of course she didn't. Anyway, let's watch the clip, and then I will show you the proof that Blaire White's taking this out of context.
So let's pretend like we all have our utopia. So if I could answer this in utopia, right? In my perfect ANCAP utopia, each community and each so it'd be each caregiver, parent, and community, including teachers, potential faith leaders, and neighbors, will decide if the child is ready to consent and look at the child's behavior. Do they have a job? How is their education going? Are they cognitively available to have sex with this individual? And then also look at the history of the individual as well. So does this individual have a history of abuse? Yep. And then you go from there. And do I feel that some minors are more equipped to engage in sexual activity with adults than others? Yes. The community and the child, if the child so desires to have intercourse with an adult, the parents, caregivers, and anyone that's, I mean, it's just what I just said. That would be up to if the child has desire, and if the community also decides that the person that they're supposed to have intercourse with is not using force, fraud, coercion, manipulation.
Now, there's a couple things I want you guys to keep in mind. Number one, when Eliza Bleu says utopia, she's talking about an ANCAP utopia, an anarcho-capitalist utopia. Eliza Bleu is an anarcho-capitalist. Anarcho-capitalists do not believe the government should exist. They believe that the government should be completely abolished, that private businesses should be allowed, private property should be allowed, but that the government should just go the F away. And so when you remove the government from the equation, what happens is that you have to establish different ways of creating community standards. Now, are Eliza's solutions probably the correct solutions? Probably not. But what's going on, what you're seeing in this clip that was taken out of context, is a libertarian thought experiment that happens at basically every libertarian event in the history of ever. And the whole point is, if there is no government, how do you enforce any sort of standard? How do you protect people? It's not about how can we sleep with as many children as possible. That's not what it is. It's about how can you protect children in a community, in a reality, in a Ancapistan in which the government doesn't exist. And Blaire White knows this. Chrissy Mayer knows this. They all know this because the host of the Liberty Lockdown podcast, which this clip is from, came on Chrissy Mayer's show and explicitly explained this to her days after Chrissy Mayer blew this clip up online to smear Eliza Bleu.
Many. Yeah. Okay, so let's pretend like we all have our like utopia. So if I could answer this in utopia, right? In my like perfect ANCAP utopia, each community and each so it'd be each caregiver, parent, and community, including teachers, potential faith leaders, and neighbors, will decide if the child is ready to consent and look at the child's behavior. Do they have a job? How is their education going? Are they cognizant?
I'm sorry, but this makes it sound like Eliza is like, the whole community can decide whether or not a kid can have sex. Because if he has a little lifeguarding job, well, then he's good to go. It's so icky.
Can I clarify? Because
okay.
I'm not going to run cover for her, but I understand the framing by which she is making this statement. The whole premise to this conversation is there a non-state solution to protect kids? That's like every libertarian thought experiment begins with, can we fix this without government? Because we don't want government,
right.
But we also don't want kids to be raped. Like, okay, so that's the reason that she's framing it in this fashion, is like, I think that the government fails at everything it does. So can we come up with a better solution to this? And her solution, whether you like it or not, is a separate question. But her solution was, well, what if we have the parents and the church and the school and blah, blah, blah. Now, the reality is the vast majority of rape comes from the parent, the church, the school.
Yes, all the people she's naming.
Yeah, it's ultimately not a great solution, but I understand the reason that she brought it up. And I think that of all the things she said, I think that's one that I don't actually agree with people, flipping out over. So for what it's worth.
Now, Blaire White had access to this. This information was out there. Chrissy Merritt actually retweeted this. It wasn't as though it was a secret. So do you think that Blaire White took any of this into account? No, of course she didn't, because the point of what Blaire White is doing is not to tell the truth. It's to produce a hit piece. So why would she possibly put this in context? Could it be that she's not smart enough to understand what anarcho-capitalist means? I think that's certainly a possibility, but I would also posit that even if Blaire White did understand what anarcho-capitalist meant, she still wouldn't have used it because she's not an ethically honest human being.
So just to recap, in Eliza's self-proclaimed perfect utopia ANCAP society in her head, so her perfect world, and her perfect world, part of that is children consenting to sex with adults if the people around that child believes that they can consent. And this is a child advocate. Amazing.
No, Blair, this is not a mystical reality that Eliza has made up. This is what Ancapistan means. When you eliminate the government, you have to figure out different ways to protect people that are based around the community and voluntarism. And so that's what's being explained. Just because you're a conservative and you don't understand these things and you want an authoritarian government as long as you control it, doesn't mean that's what everyone wants. She's blatantly taking the clip out of context. She's feigning disgust with her totally fake tan, bronzed hands because Blaire White is pretending to be black. Or is it Blaire Black? Because I don't really know what name she's using. She's feigning disgust when she doesn't really believe it because she's producing a hit piece.
I mean, this is like an animal rights advocate saying like, you know, in some situations, it's okay for a dog owner to abuse their dog if like everyone in the household agrees it's okay. Like that's literally what you just said. You crazy.
That's literally not what she just said, you absolute grifter shill.
She tried to defend the reprehensible clips, stating, I went on the show to advocate for survivors and minors. Amazing advocate work there, girl.
Remember how I told you that Blaire White had full access to this information, that it was presented in context? Now you might have said, Carlin, how do you know Blaire White even saw this? How do you know she saw this clip of the host of the Liberty Lockdown podcast explaining explicitly what was meant in that clip? Do you guys notice the retweet there that Blaire is literally displaying on the screen? That is the same clip that we just watched. Blaire is literally displaying on her screen right now that she had access to this information and she is choosing to ignore it and not tell you it because she wants you to think that Eliza is a groomer, pedo, prostitute, liar, grifter, etc., etc., etc. This is confirmation bias in action. Blaire is only showing you information that backs up the hit piece that Blaire has created here and is showing you no contradictory information, even though she has access to it. She has access to the clip we just watched. She has access to Shane Cashman's article. Nothing was preventing Blaire from using that information in her piece to present, dare I say, a more truthful perspective about what happened because Blaire White is producing a hit piece on someone. And if you ever trust her again after seeing this, that's on you, man. That is on you. Fool you once, shame on you. Fool me twice, well, you know, you get what you get at that point. I've shown you explicitly in this video that this woman is a liar. I've shown you explicitly in this video that this woman is a propagandist. If you still want to believe her because she says the talking points you want her to say, you get what you fucking deserve.
I was speaking in the clip about a hypothetical anarchist society with no government and no laws, and I stated that clearly. I believe in the current laws around these issues and abide by the current laws. I forgive the folks who didn't understand the context of the clips, even those who called me horrible names. We have nothing else to discuss, so please don't message me privately. I forgive you, but we have nothing more to discuss. I've seen your heart towards me.
Oh, look at that. It's almost like Eliza's actually being pretty gracious to her detractors, and Blaire is turning and twisting it to use against her because she's a propagandist.
I had to respond. I said, you said some minors are capable of consenting to sex with adults. If that's advocating for minors, I'd hate to see what harming them looks like. Furthermore, you specifically said in your perfect ANCAP society, there would be circumstances in which minors have sex with adults, meaning this is your idea of a utopia, girl. You were completely demented and your grift has expired.
It's almost like Blaire White is celebrating creating a hit piece in which she took information grossly out of context to incite a cancel mob against Eliza Bleu. It's almost like she's celebrating that. It's almost like she's overjoyed to be participating in cancel culture, even when you can see on her screen that she's lying. Even when you can see on her screen that she is ignoring basic context of what was said. It's almost like Blaire White is no different than any mean girl bully on the internet, and she's only creating a piece of propaganda because Eliza Bleu hurt her friend's feelings. Facts don't care about your feelings, Blair.
And I stand on that because I'm sorry. Even if she really is a victim of human trafficking, which at this point I do not believe based on all the lies she's already been caught in, all the weird contradictions, she completely disqualifies herself from speaking on these issues when she fixes her dumb mouth to say that minors can consent to sex with adults. And you are demented, you are crazy, you are psychotic, and we have to get into why you're inventing all these personas throughout your life, because I don't think you were human trafficked, but I do think something happened to you, baby girl. Something definitely happened to you. But that doesn't excuse you spitting on the graves of people who have actually been human trafficked, spitting in the face of people who are currently experiencing it now, making up your bullshit story, and then allowing yourself to be on camera saying children can consent.
If you've made it this far in the video, you have been watching for over an hour. Over an hour. This is a really long video. Congrats on making it this far. And I bring that up because you just saw Blair at her most self-righteous, just really engaging all of her acting muscles to do that performance that you just saw. Now, how do you square that level of self-righteousness with the amount of lies and distortions that Blaire White has shown you in this video? Blaire White, not her real name. She's got conflicting identities. She's got bronzer all over her hands. Oh my God, Blaire White must be trying to be black. Blaire White, who has overtly altered her body, but rags on someone for developing an accent in a community she was obviously hanging around. Blaire White, who ignores evidence that comes out before this video is published that isn't convenient to her story at all, that in fact directly contradicts her story that she had access to, just decides to ignore it because the hit piece is more important. And then she engages in this Oscar-worthy performance. That would be Blaire White's Oscar clip if she was ever talented enough to be nominated for one, in which she was really hammering it home that she is good and righteous and Eliza Bleu is the lying grifter, pedo, groomer, etc., etc., etc. Think about that anytime you see Blaire White pretend to be outraged about something ever again. She is acting.
Like, what in the Nambla talking point? And the gaslighting with this hoe is unbelievable, saying she forgives people who don't understand. No one needs your forgiveness, Eliza. People need the truth about the story that you've concocted.
Except that even if everything Eliza has said turns out to be true, verified by Shane Cashman, it will still not be enough for people like Blair. It won't be enough. They will always say Shane Cashman was just simping for Eliza. It will always be something else. Blaire White doesn't care about the truth. We've made that abundantly clear.
Eliza is the daughter of an Illinois politician named Richard Morthland. Now, I don't know why she denies being this man's daughter. It doesn't make any sense to me. But actually, now that I'm thinking about it in my head, it actually does make sense. That black scent, first of all, you're the privileged daughter of a politician in Illinois, the lieutenant governor, okay? That black scent's got to go. I'm glad you dropped it, but it should have never been there in the first place. So you're not some urban... And then secondly, the daughter of a politician being human trafficked would have been headline news, but it wasn't because you weren't.
So Blair is claiming that Eliza's trafficking would have been headline news, but Eliza didn't want her name to be associated with this, which we know, and Blair knows, because in Shane Cashman's article, Eliza talks about the fact that she didn't want her name and face used in the original article that was in the Daily Wire about her. And don't take her word for it, because you can see clearly that the woman who wrote the article, Shane's got tweets in this to prove that she said this, said that Eliza didn't want her name used. And the reason that Eliza's name was used was because the Daily Wire convinced her to do it. And you can see here, Eliza came to me during the pandemic with serious worries about abuse and trafficking. Her concern was always with others. She had so much knowledge about how to address this vital issue, otherwise largely ignored. I did ask her to include her name and photo because I thought it would bring more attention to the issue, and it did. I don't regret asking her to do so. She's one of the fiercest fighters I know. I'm being told she's targeted personally right now as she's helping Elon Musk. Strange timing. You can see the tweets for yourself. They're right there. So when Blair says it would have been headline news, she knew that Eliza Bleu was explicitly trying to keep her name out of these articles so it could focus on the victims. Blair, of course, ignored this information because she is a lying grifter shill.
Now, Elon Musk has unfollowed Eliza Bleu. I'm sure he caught on to her grift as well. After all this has been public information. I'm not bringing anything new to light. I'm just amplifying what's already out there. And it does make Twitter 2.0 under Elon look just as bad as the old Twitter where people were getting banned for unjust reasons. I mean, seeing people get banned for publicly posting screenshots of YouTube videos that are currently up is like, that's pretty disgusting. My take on Eliza is that she's a very deeply damaged person. Anyone that has had like 5, 6 personas throughout the years that are all completely different, that develops a new way of speaking to target different people, and that is bizarre behavior, okay? But all those invented personas, whatever. You standing on the backs of real victims, leveraging those real victim stories, propping up your, in my opinion, fake story for clout, for power, for fame, then abusing TOS on social media to censor people who call out your lies is disgusting.
Now look, I don't have the following that Blaire White does. I don't have the following that Chrissy Mayer does. I'm sure I'm going to get a metric F ton of crap for making this video. But you know what I think is disgusting? When influencers online overtly ignore the truth, even when they have it. When they have it and they know about it and there is no question, they ignore the truth because they're more interested in their mean girl fucking clicks. They're more interested in engaging in cancel culture than doing anything productive at all. Some might say, I'm trying to engage in cancel culture with this. I don't want Blaire White to be canceled. I want Blaire White to continue to talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. Because the more people like her talk, the more they reveal themselves. If you support people who take things out of context, who lie, who distort things purely to gang up on another person because they don't like them, this is fucking high school. This is stupid. And this is why the right loses every single time. Bullshit like this. This is what drove people like me away from wanting to help conservatives at all in any way, because nothing they do is real. Eliza Bleu is not a perfect person. Like I said, I'm not friends with her. There are many things that I think she should have done differently in this whole circumstance. But why is what Blaire White just did any better? Why is it any different? She's got over 1 million subscribers, and she just created a smear piece. And people are applauding her, stunning and brave, stunning and brave, stunning and brave, just like the fucking leftist that she is. I think I've proven my point. It's 3 a.m. now. I'm going to bed. We'll see you guys soon.